Hey friends, I hope you guys are good. I'm Adrian. We back with this class. Let me just open up Photoshop before we get too carried away. So this is the second part. Previously we studied the back muscles and a bit of the arms, but then we kind of went through those back muscles. So it's gonna be like pretty much the same technique. It's kind of similar. If I open up, we only have one reference, so it's this pose. Now, honestly, looking at this, you might be like intimidated by all these muscles. Most of them are in action, and there's pinching going on here. So we're gonna go through all of them, those superficial muscles that are affecting the skin. Firstly, before we dissect this, I just wanna do a quick recap. Just bring this to your attention. So for us to know, I'm just going to do a quick recap. So we said in our last class, it's what's priority to us, what we firstly want to know before we dissect this. What we firstly need to know, number one, I'm just going to do a quick sketch. It's the skeleton, which consists of the bones, like the clavicle, the sternum. Because we're doing the front now. Now we need to know which bones are underneath over here. And so the clavicles. So we know we have our clavicle, and then our chromium process, and then the chromium process of the scapula. So the scapula is at the back, but then what it sends to the front, there's a coracoid process and there's a clunoid, the clunoid cavity over here, which the humerus inserts. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to open up. Let me see if I have a skeleton. Sorry to see. I'm just going to figure out. I didn't have a skeleton underneath from our little classes. I think this will work. But it's just so this is what I was talking about. So here's our scapula. Here's our clunoid cavity. So this is where now the humerus articulates with the rest of the body. So this is where it articulates, and there's this process over here, the coracoid process. You need to know that. You need to know that which muscles insert and which muscles connect there. And then we have the chromium process of the scapula. So the clavicle it connects over here. Just a quick note. And then there's your humerus. And as you can see, there's this protuberance over here, which is the deltoid tuberosity, and here's our. So these are epicondyles. These are medial epicondyle. Medial because it's towards the body, and if it is away from the body, which is this one, it it's lateral. So it's medial upper condyles and lateral upper condyles, and at the back over there we have our olecranon, which it's kind of visible, but we're not doing the back, we're just doing the anterior part of the body. And then we have our rib cage, and then we see the clavicle connects. We're still going to go through the rib cage over there. I just want to bring that into your attention. We went through the forearms in our another class, where we focused in each muscles over there. So if I go back to our model over here, as we went through the skeleton now we went through, there's our medial upper condyles, lateral upper condyle, and the humerus. So we're going to end there, and then there's our clavicle, and then it connects with the sternum in this manner. I'm just going to highlight the sternum over here, kind of with the sternum, and then we obviously have our rib cage. As you can see, just outlining it. So once we have that in our mind, and probably what is good to know is the vertebral column, so where the spinal cord runs. So the center line, the vertebral column, it's also important here. And I would say we also want to study the pelvis. We also want to know the pelvis. So here's our iliac crest, and here's our azis, which is the anterior superior. So anterior, superior, iliac, spine, anterior. So if the superior, it has to be inferior, which is some over here, with the sartorius, and then the raster, the rectus femoris attaches. So there's also the anterior, inferior, iliac spine, and if there's anterior, there's posterior, which is at the back. We won't focus on that. So once we know our bones underneath, so I'm just going through these bones. It's not like we're gonna go to each of them. So if I can possibly get like let's just to brush up where I touched. If I can I think it will be best if I just can open a skeleton for you guys, just that we can just recap before we go to a second step. As we spoke, okay, here's our, so it's like understanding now, okay, the skeleton. We at this stage, it's very important, ignore the muscles, ignore the skin, the muscle striations, ignore that mass. Just firstly figure out where are the bones, what's underneath, which bones are in action. Once we know which bones are in action, we'll go to the second step, which is the origin and insertions. Let me not move ahead of you guys. So we're not gonna do the legs. We're just focusing on this torso and this arm, which is very, very, very fantastic to study. I'm just gonna get my brush, probably like change the color to blue, and then this is what we were talking about. This is our pelvis over here. can see our pelvis, and here's our anterior, superior, iliac spine, and anterior, inferior, iliac spine. And then here's our vertebral column. So as you know, we have lumbar L5, which is lumbar vertebra 5, which is the last one, and there's L1, and then from L1 we have T12, which connects with the rib. So the thoracic vertebrae 12 connects with the floating rib, which is our last rib. So it's kind of easy to remember the rib cage. If you kind of know which rib is it, you can kind of know where it's connecting. So all the rib cage, the entire rib cage, it's connected to the thoracic vertebra. So rib 1, let me just do it quickly. Rib 1, it's connected to T1, thoracic vertebrae 1. That's rib 1. So, and rib 2 is connected to T2, and so forth until you reach 12. So that's how to remember it. And then from there we have C7 to, I think it's A1, the atlas. So C7, C1, and then we have and then it's most called the first one. It's called the atlas. That's the first one, which connects with the skull, which causes those rotations over there. And then the axis is C2. So just knowing those can put us in the right place. Just do a quick recap. So we have our rib cage, we know our sternum, that the ribs are attached. So rib 1, rib 2, rib 3. So they attaching via the costal cartilage. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have our ribs. So the only connection we have, this is very important to know, the only bone-to-bone connection we have from the axial skeleton, which is the center, with the appendicular skeleton, it's this clavicle over here. So these clavicles, they connect, and they connect with the chromium process, so which makes these. So the center is the axial skeleton, is the appendicular skeleton. So this is the only connection we have. It's here. This is the, sorry, not here. It's here, but the sternum, where the clavicle connects with the sternum. That's only bone-to-bone connection. The scapula is not joined with any bone with the rib cage at the back. So the space at the back. It's very important to know. So we know our bones: sternum, clavicle, cranial process of the scapula, and the coracoid process, and the cranial cavity, and the humerus, and the vertebral column, and the pelvis. Those are the bones we need to know when we look at this. When we look at this torso, those are the bones we need to understand what's happening with them. So next, once we know the skeleton underneath, I'm just gonna bring this to your attention. Number 2, this is just a recap from our previous class. I'm just trying to emphasize this, just get it into your guys' system to download this in this process, because it works. I showed you previously, and we also gonna prove this in ZBrush that this works. And when we starting to dissect this, you're gonna see it works. You're gonna see it works. So next, once we have our bones, understanding the bones, understanding the proportions of the bones underneath, we go to the second part with it, which is origin and insertions. So origin and insertions, now these are the muscles and the tendons, the muscle tendons. That's our second step. We need to know where they're coming from, where are they connected, where they're originating from, and where are they inserting. So we need to know each and every muscle. Even those deep muscles, we're gonna go through them, because those muscles that have the potential to affect the skin, we need to dive deep with those muscles. We cannot ignore them. You can never study. It's gonna be impossible for you unless you just wanna copy pictures. By that, you will never learn dynamic figure sculpting. You will never learn anatomy in motion if you just copy the picture and try to replicate without understanding what's happening underneath, without understanding the motions, the squash and stretch, without understanding that it's going to be totally pointless to you. So these classes, I'm sharing them for free with you guys, like spending 1 hour. Let's just because I know once you watch these classes till the end, finishing them, and it's gonna be very, very easy. Like once you tackle the entire body, so we focus mainly on the most complex one. So I'm mainly focusing on the most complex parts, because I know once you finish these classes, any pose you see, you'll be like, okay, I know what you do now. I need to find my skeleton. I need to know which muscles are inserted into which bone, where they are originating from. I need to know that. It's going to be very, very easy for you guys. So let's jump back into Photoshop. So once you know the origins and insertions of the muscles, let me close this. Now let's go through a few muscles. I'm just gonna grab my brush, open a new layer. I'm just gonna open a new layer. So the first muscle, okay, let's open the skeleton. I think this is gonna be, I don't know, yeah, let's do it over here, because we have the muscles over here. So the first muscle we need to bring into attention is this muscle here, inserting at the humerus. Let me just do a quick sketch. It kind of twists, as you can see, what I was trying to emphasize there. So it's divided into 3 parts. Let me just draw the entire thing, and then we'll focus on. So it's divided into 3 parts. We have the clavicular head, which inserts lower than the rest. So it kind of moves down, and it's superior, but then when it inserts, it inserts more inferior to the rest of them. So it originates from the clavicle, so that's why it's called the clavicular head. So you need to know the separation. So when this happens, these lines pop up, you kind of know what's happening now. Let's go back to our chart over here, our figure. So we have so this entire muscle, let's just write this. It's the, I think you know it, it's the pector, spelling might be wrong, pectoralis major. So there's a pectoralis minor, which we won't go through. It's kind of not important. It almost never appears, but it does sometimes, but then it's rare. In this case, we kind of not need it. And next, second head, we have the sternal head. This is the biggest one, the sternal head. The pectoral. And then lastly, if I can grab, let me just find another color, probably just grab a green. And lastly, if I'm not mistaken, it's the abdominal head. Kind of forgot this one, but the abdominal head, it's the smaller one. So these three parts, it's very important we know them and where they originate. So it inserts by the abdominal, so by the rib, but then on top of the abdominal muscles, that's the origins, and they all insert at the humerus bone, and they kind of like twist as I showed you guys there. So the one that is more inferior inserts more superior, the one that is more superior inserts more inferior. So it causes that twist that goes on. So that's our pectoralis major. And next, I think I'm gonna hide this for now. And then next we kind of have so there's a muscle that just gonna open a new layer. So if you can open up, just search in Google, the next muscle is the serratus serratus. So kind of a cut there, the serratus anterior. So what's very nice about studying anatomy now, just download those charts and just look at them, just search for those charts, and serratus anterior. So kind of anterior goes it's at the front. So it originates from the middle border of the scapula, the end of it, and then it inserts rib 1, rib 2, rib 3, as you can see, and so forth. Rib 5, it kind of disappears when it turns. So you kind of need to know that when we look at the serratus. And here's it over here, and here's the serratus over here. As you can see, serratus anterior. And our next muscle, we went through this, so I'm just gonna fly through it. It's the deltoid, originating from the clavicle, chromium process, and then the scapula. So this is the anterior head, and inserting at this tuberosity over here, which is called the deltoid tuberosity. So we know our origins and insertions, and then we have I'm just gonna, I think this might be also useful for this class. I'm just gonna open up this chart in Photoshop, and then we have this from our previous lesson, and then we have remember when I told you about the coracle process? This is the coracle process. Now we have the biceps, which has two heads, originating from the coracle process and the lunar gravity, and these heads join together to insert at the radius, so over here. So we kind of went through this. I'm not gonna be too fancy. So that's our biceps, and then our brachialis kind of inserts at the ulna, originating from the humerus to the ulna. And then lastly we have the trapezius. Has three heads, so that's why it's called tri. As you can kind of see, the origin insertions, inserting here and at the humerus, and then insert at the olecranon. This is a bone, by the way, the olecranon. So we have those. Let's go back to our, so we have those muscles. Now what we want to know, so we have our sternum. Now there's the last muscle. There's two muscles actually. So there's one underneath, which consists of a 6-pack or 8-pack. That's one, which is a rectus abdominis muscle. So it's covered with so there's like 4 of them, but we're gonna go through only 2 of them because these sheets will be affecting the skin in our reference over there. So first one is the rectus abdominis, which covers the 6-pack, inserting over here. And then what's on top of it, it's we have the external obliques. You can see it kind of, external obliques have the zigzag as they kind of join with the serratus anterior. So they kind of have these 2 heads. So external obliques. So these ones are more external. So they kind of originate from the rib cage with the serratus. So if you see the zigzag going on, I'm just gonna come in like this. I'm gonna grab red. So the green is the serratus anterior, and then the red is the external oblique. So it kind of joins like this at the side, and if I grab by green again and insert at the iliac crest over here, and then the pubis bone over here. That's the most outer part. So there's a rectus abdominis, which has a 6-pack, and then over it there's the stem fascia and the muscle on the side, which is a external obliques. And then lastly we have, I'm just gonna fly through this muscles. So it's the sternum. I normally reference this in most of my examples when I'm doing anatomy examples. I reference with this, the sternum, and then clido, mastoid. So you can just search this So it's this muscle over here. It's the sternum because it inserts at the sternum, and clavicle, so clavicle, and then originates from the master process. When you palpate the back of your ear, that bone over there, that's the master process, and that's where it originates. So it's clear. So it's the sternum, clavicle, master. That's the easy muscle to remember. And then we went through the trapezius on our previous class, which I'm not going to go through in this class. Now, going to quickly dissecting this before we open up the ZBrush. Now, once we know our first step, now we know our origins and insertions. So the first step, which is the skeleton, and then the origins and insertions. Third step is practice. That's what we're doing now. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open up a new layer. We're running out of time. We have 30 minutes, and then I'm just going to open up a new layer. So I know my bones, so I'm just going to start with this, the biceps. As I know, we know where it inserts at the radius. So I have my biceps, and then originates at the, so here's our, let me just do a quick, here's our clavicle, our scapula over here, crumbing process, and then the clavicle. So we know it originates from the coracoid process and the lunar gravity. Let's just draw this. You can see when it turns, the separation happens here. And there's this muscle over here, we didn't go through it. If you can just go to search, it's called the coracoid, coracoid brachialis. This tiny muscle over here, you can see protruding. So it also inserts at the coracoid process. So if this is the coracoid process, these two muscles insert at the coracoid process. So this is the biceps, this is the coracoid brachialis. And then we have our pectoralis major, fighting to go to the humerus over there, as you can see. And then you can see the separation. So you can kind of see your clavicular head. It's stretching a lot. So it is in action. You can see that indents, your clavicular head. See that separation over here. What we were talking about earlier, which is very important. You can see over here, and then sternal head, and very tiny. You can see a abdominal head. So here's our pectoralis major. Here's our deltoid muscle, and epicondyle, medial epicondyle, and then what we have here is the triceps muscle. And if you watch our previous class, here's our, we went through the teres major, inserted all originating from the scapula. So we have our teres major here, and our latissimus muscle. It's kind of thick, so it's a latissimus dorsi, inserting at the pubic bone, the iliac crest, and then at the back. I'm just going to try and emphasize it. Once we have that, now we know, if you see the zigzag going on, remember it's the serratus and the external obliques. So I'm just going to kind of draw this. So yeah, it's kind of fading out with a lot of stretching. So here's our serratus anterior, and now we kind of know our external obliques, and then here's our rectus abdominis muscles. Kind of squashing and stretching here because the man is facing that side. So here's our trapezius, the back trapezius muscles. So if you're getting lost, just revert to our previous classes. Probably you kind of get an understanding what's happening. And then here's our external cleidomastoid. Same thing, pectoralis major, and then our deltoids, and then our biceps, coracobrachialis, latissimus dorsi, and then our triceps. So it's kind of, I don't know if you see how easy it is to dissect it once we went through our first step and our second step. It's kind of very easy. So without any further ado, I'm just going to open up, I'm going to close the entire Photoshop, and then we're going to jump into ZBrush. And then I'm just going to load in our reference in PureRef, where we might understand. Just going to scale this up a tad. Bear with me for a second. Okay, so this is what we have. Now, looking at this, I'm just going to grab my Damien standard. Pretty much the same technique, guys. Grab my Damien standard. I know my my biceps muscle, and my coracoid, my pectoralis major, and my deltoids, sternal, cleidomastoid. That's pretty much like the same thing. I know those muscles are there. And then our latissimus muscle, and then teres major, and then our triceps. Same thing, biceps, coracoid, and then our triceps. And we can just emphasize the separation. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my hair build up, turn down the intensity very low, probably like 4 is fine. So where there's stretching, you can just come in and emphasize that. From how I see it, it bulges out even more from this side. So we're going to do a quick dirty sketch of the muscles we studied. Now when you look at reference now, you already have everything in your mind. You can kind of know what's happening, because everything added up. Because we spent a lot of time focusing on the muscles and insertions rather than just trying to copy what you don't know what's happening. You will never learn like that. So I truly never advise my students to go that route, because I myself learned not to do it anymore, because I kind of avoided to study anatomy, but then at the long run, I never regretted why I started. It helped me with a lot to understand the forms. So I'm just gonna come in very quickly now, as we don't have much time. Just coming and building up those forms. So once you have the sketches, you can kind of know what's happening there. And then our biceps. And then our collar. And then our latissimus muscle, latissimus dorsi. Just dial that down to 2, and then our teres major. Our triceps, and then our serratus muscle. I'm just going to come in. So yeah, it kind of fades away, and then trying to bring back now our external obliques, just a tad, and there's a skin fold going on there. And then lastly we have our rectus abdominis muscle, which is this one, a 6-pack. So there's a lot of squashing going on, so you just kind of need to emphasize that also. I would come in and just build it up even more. Rectus abdominis. And then yeah, I don't know guys, so yeah, thank you very much for your time. We'll kind of leave it here for this class. I hope you guys grabbed something out of this, and again, if you have any questions, I'll be available to assist where I can. So it's just a quick recap. It's just those principles that I need you guys to spend more time in. It's the first step when you're seeing any dynamic figure in motion. It's just to not freak out. Don't rush into the muscle details. Just your eyes must just learn to work like an X-ray. So you basically looking underneath the skin, below the muscles. You basically now trying to figure out those bones. That's what you're trying to do all the time. So that's the trick right there. So just practice that technique and give it more time. I'll be available for any questions and further assistance. And if you guys do anything fancy with this, you just show us your practices, and we hope to assist each other in understanding this even more. So thank you very much for your time. Again, I'm Adrian, and I hope to see you guys on the next class, which I don't know when it's gonna be and which part. So if you guys are struggling with anything, you can even tell us like which part do you want us to focus on in the human body. because we can end up to like forget, because we kind of chose those hard sections, but then if you guys have like any suggestions in mind, it's okay, just give us a shout. We are available for any assistance. Again, it's Adrian here from Anatomy, and I will see you guys on the next class.